Welcome back to the channel, you guys. As you know, this is the first film review on the channel, and today we are going to be reviewing one of my favorite films of the year. I would say this is probably like my second favorite film of the year. Definitely probably my best theater experience this year so far. We still have 4 months to go. Anything could happen, right? Shoot for the stars. Give me excellence, Hollywood. Give me everything. But today we are going to be talking about Sorry Baby. Yes, so if you didn't know, Sorry Baby was a film that premiered at Sundance this year. I was interacting with like the Sundance films this year through their online version of it. Since COVID, they've been doing like an online version, if you did not know, which I'm happy about, because prior to COVID, you really couldn't interact with Sundance unless you went there. Like, you're just reading reviews all weekend, and that's not really that fun. You want to like be there, you want to be seeing the films. And so when they implemented like the online Sundance stuff after COVID, it was just like, a wannabe cinephile's dream. And so ever since then, I've been doing like 3 to 4 films a year at Sundance, because it is pricey. Like, the tickets are, they're not cheap. They're not even like the average price of a movie ticket. Like, they're like $35, sometimes $45, I think, depending on the film. So, I try to like, save my coins. But this year I did do 3 films. And I'm trying to think, of those 3 films, I'm definitely going to talk about one of them, because one of them is still my favorite film of the year. And it is premiering later on this year, and we're going to talk about it on the channel. But the other 2, I didn't care for at all. And we'll get into that. I'm going to do like a year recap video, because obviously it's August when this is going to be posted. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to like, give a video to everything I've been watching this year. But I definitely want to do a recap video to go over everything I've seen, right? There's obviously like movies that like I definitely want to give its own video to, like Sinners. Definitely gonna give Sinners its own video. And then definitely we're gonna talk about Superman. We're gonna talk about Fantastic Four. We're gonna talk about Eddington. We're gonna talk about Materialist. We're gonna talk about some things. Like, we're gonna talk about everything we can, right? But I think I'm gonna do like just like a general video into like miscellaneous films I've seen this year, and then just like do a quick run through of them all, because not everything needs 20 minutes to talk about. Some things are only worth 60 seconds or 5 minutes, right? So we'll get into those later on. But for today, we're gonna be talking about Eva Victor's Sorry Baby. So, Eva Victor's Sorry Baby is directed by Eva Victor. It stars Eva Victor. It is written by Eva Victor. It is also Eva Victor's directorial debut, which we're going to get into, because I think that's just like really, 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 really inspiring. That like your first film is a great film. You directed it, you wrote in it, and you starred in it, right? Cool. It's produced by Frank Ariza and Carol Baradin, if I'm saying that right. The cinematographer is Mia Keofi Henry, and the production company is Big Beach and High Frequency Entertainment. How did I come in contact with this film? So, like I said, Sorry Baby premiered at Sundance, and I saw it, right? And I know there was a lot of people talking about it, but stay with me for a second. I'm not a cat person, right? The marketing for this film at Sundance was the cat. The cat was in all the marketing, right? And so I'm thinking like, oh, this is gonna be a movie about like a chick who finds like a cat somewhere, and we gotta follow her and this weird ass cat and this weird ass relationship between both of them, X, Y, and Z, right? But come to find out, post Sundance, it's a story about something so much better, right? And I'm kind of happy that like I skipped out on it in Sundance, because I feel like if I was watching it from my computer at home in February, that kind of would have dulled my experience. I think watching this movie in the theaters like made the experience 10 times better. So in hindsight, I think it was a good choice to like dub it at Sundance and watch it when it came out. So I finally got to see it this summer. I finally got to see the movie this summer, and I went and saw it like the second to last week of release in the theaters, and I saw it at like a local small theater, which I think was great. And I went into it like really with no expectations. I know I saw a lot of people saying it was great. I didn't read any reviews. I usually do read a few reviews before I go to see a film that like everybody's talking about, just to get a sense of like what actually I'm getting myself into. But I went into it blind, and I still only had the perceptions of it being about like a cat, or like a woman who finds a cat, right? But going into it blind was great. So, Sorry Baby is a film about our protagonist, Agnes, played by Eva Victor. And it's about how our character, Agnes, and the people surrounding her navigate her experience through sexual assault, right? And I really found this film like very, very, very interesting because I think it took a different route when it comes to telling such stories than most visual media has taken, at least this century, right? I akin this film storytelling to storytelling such as like I May Destroy You by Michaela Cole on HBO or Made on Netflix starring Margaret Qualley, right? Which people are kind of like, down on. A lot of people are down on Made, but I like Made, right? 'Cause I know there's a book for Made as well, and I think a lot of people took like what the book was versus what the show was differently. So, I liked it though. And then also, I think like the first season of Big Little Lies, like I think those 3 seasons of television encompass the tone that this film by Eva Victor took when it comes to such storytelling about sexual assault. I found this film really great. I found it really inspiring. And I just want to get into like a breakdown of the like overall premise of the film and the messaging, right? And then we can go through like its format and its characters and all of that. So like the premise, right? I think the premise that I took from this film and the message that I took from this film, it's basically like a guide for the viewer into how someone would experience sexual assault in real life, right? And stick with me. I think the film was not trying to put the viewer in the footsteps of somebody who experienced sexual assault as most visual media that takes on the storytelling will do. Most stories like this will bring you into the room where the assault happened. Most storytelling like this will try to make you feel as bad as the victim in the situation does feel, so then it can draw out a certain level of empathy, right? Without having to actually like use different tactics to make you empathize with the victim here. Make you feel bad make you feel bad about what you're watching. So then you can understand how bad the person you're watching feels and how bad the situation is, right? No. I think this film tries to hit on what the average person in the world will come in contact with sexual assault. And that is as a bystander. Most people will not experience, extreme formats of sexual assault or violence when it comes to such cases or anything like that. I think most people will encounter sexual assault as a bystander. It'll always be someone you know, someone you've heard of, somebody you've seen, or someone you know, and someone who you know through someone else, right? You always hear about it, and then rarely like maybe it'll be a family member, maybe not, maybe it'll be a friend, who knows? Maybe it'll be like a mentee, or maybe it'll be a mentor, or it's somebody you will run into who has experienced sexual assault, and they'll usually talk about it candidly, right? Or just in passing, like it won't be something that is like just really detrimental to them, and sometimes it will be. I've had my fair share of experiences with people who have been sexually assaulted, right? And, I wouldn't say I've been sexually assaulted myself. I've had been at the club and there's been an ass slap or somebody try to touch me and try to touch my body. And I'm like, no, don't touch my body. I don't want you touching my body, right? But I've never actually been physically violated, right? In my perception, right? And I do empathize with those who do, but I think most people don't. I think most people in the world don't empathize with people who have experienced sexual assault. They just don't. Most people don't believe those people who have experienced such things because they have not encountered such things themselves. So, it's hard for them to put themselves in somebody's footsteps. And obviously, a big piece to that is misogyny. People just don't believe women are telling the truth when they say they don't want sexual advances. People believe that women are pathological liars when it comes to how they interact with men. I don't believe that, but most people do. And so then this film sets out to show the viewer how, regardless of your capacity in knowing somebody who's been in sexual assault instances, how you can aid them in getting through that and how you can be there for them, right? Not how you can make the situation right per se, but how you are supposed to navigate such situations. And I think that's so valuable in today's time. Because even in 2025, most people still don't understand how to navigate sexual assault, especially not when supporting somebody who's been through that. And we can get into how they allow you to understand how you should navigate that when we get into the character breakdown. But before we get into the character breakdown, I do want to go into the format of the film, right? Because this film is a film that uses chapter formatting when it comes to how it's expressing the story to you, right? I'm a person who loves chapter formatting. I really do when it comes to film. Like if you break a story up into chapters and it's done well, love it, right? There's a lot of people who don't like chapter formatting, and especially how this film does it, because this film doesn't do chronological order chapter formatting. It does mosaic order formatting. And like a recent film that I love that does the same thing is Strange Darling, right? Which is a very controversial film. A lot of people don't like Strange Darling, but I loved Strange Darling. I may do a video on Strange Darling, but we'll get back to that later, right? But just like Strange Darling, this film does mosaic chapter formatting for the film, right? Meaning that the chapters of the film are not chronological. They don't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They go 2, 3, 6, 7, 8, 1, 0, 9, right? Okay, so then you have all of those 5 chapters and they're kind of mixed up, and I think that sets a great understanding of the story for the viewer when trying to convey to them how they should navigate interacting with people who have experienced sexual assault in their lives, right? So let's run through how the chapters were sequenced for the viewer in this film, right? So first we open the film with the first chapter, which is called The Year with the Bad Thing, right? And so this chapter basically was where we open up with Lydie, Agnes's best friend, coming to visit her. And we have no actual context of like what has occurred between them, between their friendship, or whether they're dating, or whether whatever is going on, right? We just know that like Lydie's pulling up to her best friend's house. She's like, oh, I haven't seen you in a while. Great. Love you. Cool, cool, cool. We catch up. Kiki. Ha, 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 ha. Right. Cool. That was cool. Then the second chapter is the year when the bad thing happened, right? And we all know what the bad thing is here. And so this is the chapter where like the assault occurs, right? But in this chapter, you get a whole different Agnes, right? And I think that's the brilliance of this film, where like it sways your discernment in regards to like what you're actually watching. Because in the first chapter, you do understand that Agnes is like a little standoffish. You do know something happened. You don't know what happened because Agnes is not being like really weird. She's just being like standoffish, right? Or is she just being like, or you kind of just feel like, honestly, you kind of just feel like Agnes is being weird because like she hasn't seen Lydie in so long. And you know how like when like you have friendships and y'all like don't talk for a while, and that's what you assume has happened between them, but like y'all don't talk for a while, and then when you do come together, like it's like a little period of like awkwardness because you're trying to understand like, are we the same people? Is our friendship the same? Do we really like each other anymore? Do I like you? Like, and it's like that could be like an hour-long period. Like it could just be like a few icebreakers need to happen, but sometimes that could be a few days. Like sometimes if you move back to a city or move back to a neighborhood where somebody you used to like really, really mess with lived there, and like y'all stopped talking after you left, you kind of want to like know like, is this person different? Do I vibe with them? So that's kind of like what you thought about when you see the first chapter, right? But then by the end of the first chapter and beginning of the second chapter, you totally understand that something has occurred. Because in the second chapter, Agnes is completely different. She's way more loose. She's way more rhetorical, quippy with her words. She's putting her feet on the walls. She's twirling her hair a little bit while she's reading. She's excellent at her schoolwork. Like, in the first chapter, it kind of gets the impression that like Lydie's like the friend who like is proficient at everything. But then in the second one, we realized that like in college, Lydie was the one who had to try harder in class. Like really the master genius out of the two was Agnes when it came to I believe they're getting like their literature degree, because like I think journalism and literature degrees, or English degrees I should say, are the only people who actually like have to sit in like seminars like that. I know that people who get like majors in like languages have to do that as well. Like I know there's people like if you're getting like your major in French or like international business studies and you have to like learn another language, you have seminars like that in this film that are like 10 people with one person in a room, and like y'all like are in a circle or in like some type of like formation that allows all of you to see each other, and like you just like talk to each other about stuff and formulate it out, and then like do a paper later on and come back to class, right? All of that. But then in the second chapter, you see Agnes as a different person. And then we get introduced to Preston Decker, right? Agnes's professor. I'm back. Something happened with my camera, but I'm gonna continue. The show goes on. Okay, so the third chapter, right? The third chapter we're introduced to in this film is the year with the questions, right? And so this is the chapter that deals with like the year after Agnes was assaulted, right? And so we deal with like the fallout of that, how she feels distant from people, X, Y, and Z. And then the fourth chapter that we're introduced to is the year of the good sandwich. Now, this is like the year, like this is years down the road, like I think like 2 or 3 years down the road. And this is the chapter where Agnes runs into the character of Pete, who we'll talk about later. And then the fifth chapter is the year with the baby, which is the final chapter of the film, where Agnes is introduced to Lydie's new baby, right? And so that concludes the film. But I feel like all of the sequencing for those chapters was to dissuade the viewer from, you know, developing like assumptions on things that like weren't clear yet and weren't made clear until like Eva Victor wanted us to know. And so I just think that was brilliant. Like, I think it was really, 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 really good storytelling. So let's go ahead and get into the character breakdowns because I'm ready to talk about these characters. Okay. So first up, first things first, we have our protagonist, Agnes, right? I love Agnes. I think Agnes is like kind of like an unconventional protagonist today. Like usually, like, you know, you have this archetype, like, you know, you have your white woman who's like, you know, the protagonist, and she's a little quippy, she's a little sarcastic, she's a little rhetorical. She usually has like an array of like romantic interests, things like that, right? Cliche, right? But when I say unconventional, I mean like you don't really get somebody who's just like that, like off-putting as your protagonist. Lately, I would say, maybe I'm wrong, who knows, but I felt that way. And I think it was like really refreshing. I think it was refreshing just to like view her as like a regular person. I didn't feel like Agnes was like some type of like unique personality I was watching. It was like an everyday person. She's actually like really, really cool, honestly. Like I think that's probably like what I liked most about the character is that she was cool. Like I actually would want to be around Agnes. So yeah, I loved her. I think Agnes's storyline was great. I think Agnes's house is nice. I think Agnes's career path was interesting as well. We don't really like. I think there was an era in like in the 2010s where like our protagonists were all like English majors or like looking to be like journalists or stuff like that. But then like that funneled out, right? That like funneled out really quick. We had gotten to like a little era of like people wanting to be bums, like, you know, all this stuff. But I think like bringing that English major thing back here where like is very interesting, and it's kind of like we're like isolated in this college town as well for the story, which I liked. We didn't have to worry too much about her surroundings. Like it was a very quiet, like liberal arts college town, and so it allowed her to maneuver through the scenes very well. Like when we talk about how the film was formulated, I think with the character Agnes, when it comes to her experience, one of the ways that this film takes the viewer and puts the viewer in the position of viewing Agnes's experience with sexual assault from the way that they would in the real life as a bystander is that when it comes to Agnes's sexual assault, we aren't there, right? We get left on the street. The camera it leaves you across the street and you have to sit there, right? And at first moment, like you kind of don't really want to believe like something bad is about to happen. Like you kind of want to believe like, you know, they're going to go in, she's going to come out feeling a little weird, and then like we're going to pivot to something else in the film. But we don't, right? It leaves you across the street. You see the sun go down. You see the sun in the air, and you see the moon come up, right? You hear the whistling of the leaves on the street. You hear the birds chirping. You hear the dogs. You see neighbors in the neighborhood walking up and down the street, right? You're just sitting there because you in real life, if you knew Agnes, you would not have been there. You would not have seen what Agnes experienced. You would have not seen how Preston Decker acted towards Agnes when he shut that door, right? You would have just been across the street. And even when the assault happens and Agnes comes out, it's not like this big abrupt event because it wouldn't be like that in real life, right? Because usually victims are embarrassed. Like you're embarrassed, so you're not going to lash out most of the time, at least I believe, when you've been assaulted, right? And so when Agnes comes out on the porch of Professor Decker's house and she like slowly but like kind of eerily puts on her shoes and then she just starts walking and we follow her walking through this small liberal arts college town. We follow her through like a back streets, through neighborhoods, and like through the shadows of tree lines that are low, and even like her passing some people and her walking back to her car where she parked, right? And then she gets in the car, and we're with her in the car, and we're just watching her drive. And she doesn't like burst out into tears either, but like you can feel the emotion is there, and you feel like she feels horrible, right? And so you're still questioning like, oh my gosh, what happened? But you like know what happened at this point. And I think that scene, that whole sequence is like very, I think that whole sequence is very, 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 very special, because that's just how it would happen in real life. You won't be there. You won't be there to see. You'll only hear testament of somebody's experience when it comes to their sexual assault, right? And I think most people don't want to believe anybody when it comes to their sexual assault unless they see it. They don't want to believe it unless they see like the assault happen, or there's video, or there's text messages that like clearly show that something happened, or like they have seen the assaulter in the situation act out, right? But here it doesn't do that. It doesn't allow you to have that visual that other visual medias would allow you to have of the assault. So then you don't have to question anything. You have to question, oh, is she telling the truth? Did it go how she says it went? X, Y, and Z. No, they just want you to unequivocally, whatever, however you say that word. They want you to unequivocally believe that like that assault happened, so then like they can tell their story without you having to like victim blame, right? But I think in this story, it doesn't show you the assault, but it makes you walk with her, right? Because it shows you that like, no, this is what happens, right? When you are a person in the world and you live in a world where sexual assault happens. The people aren't running down the streets screaming and crying after. They aren't going directly to the police, as most people would say. Like, oh my gosh, why didn't you go to the police? Why didn't you call the police immediately? They don't do those things. And so they do go home. They do go to their friend, as Agnes did, and they do console those people. And they do live in silence to a certain extent. Like, I think the film really had Agnes like really sit with her assault. And I think a lot of people feel like when victims sit with their assault, they're remorseful, right? And I don't think that the film allows you to believe that Agnes was remorseful. Even it talks about that. Agnes even hits on that. How does she feel about Preston Decker, right? She's like, she knows she should feel that he should die, right? She knows that she should feel that he should be locked up. She knows that she feels that, you know, somebody should shoot him or something like that. But it's like, she also just feels like, wow, maybe this person like just made a mistake. But I think that's also like, it's like, that's what's so great about this film. The way that it gives the viewer perspective allows for you to understand the nuance in such experiences. There's so much nuance in an experience of sexual assault. And I think this film does it very well. And I'm probably not explaining it as best as I could, but if you understand what I mean and you saw what I saw, you get it, right? Cool. So we can move on, and I think we're going to go into all the other characters, and based on the other characters, we'll talk about how they interacted with Agnes, right? Because I didn't go way too deep into Agnes, but we'll get into more Agnes stuff as we get through all of the characters, right? So let's move on to Lottie, right? Lottie, played by Naomi Aki. Love her. I think Naomi Aki is having a very, very good year, like past year, like last fall to this fall. First she had, what's that film? I almost said Pussy Island. Like I literally almost said Pussy Island, but it's not called Pussy Island. It's called Blink Twice, right? By Zoe Kravitz, right? And Naomi Aki was the lead actress in that. I think she was really, really good in that film. I'm not high on that film, but like some people are. I totally understand it. I think it was perfectly fine. I think it was a little odd to a certain extent, but I think Naomi Aki was great in that. And then you have Naomi Aki in Mickey 17 this year, which we'll talk about in a later video, but in Mickey 17, Naomi Aki, she did her thing. She played her role well, right? And then you have her in this film, Sorry Baby, which is like, there's three completely different roles, right? Not completely different, obviously, because like she's playing a black woman, she's playing like a woman who's outgoing and adventurous in a certain extent, things like that. But there are three different like personas, and I think that she does them all well. And here it's really, really good. You have Lydie being the best friend to Agnes, right? Also her classmate. also her roommate. She's a British friend. This film doesn't really talk about like why she's British, but like I kind of think like more films need to like stop trying to explain like how somebody got there when they're from Britain, or like just plainly say it as if it's normal, because like people from all across the world come to America. Why do we have to like be weird about it, right? So I think I like that they allowed Naomi Ackie to have her British accent here, or like UK accent. I don't know exactly where she's from. But Lighty is here to represent how friends of people who go through sexual assault should aid their friends and guide and help guide their friends through their experience, so then they can go on the other side of it, right? And I think it was so good. I love Lighty as a character. She's so consoling. I think that's what Lighty really is here. It's like a figure of consoling. When the assault happens and Agnes goes back to her apartment or dorm or house, like I really did not understand like what their like living situation was for like a few moments in the film. But when she goes back and Lighty's like, something's off, like what's wrong, what happened? And then we cut to like Agnes is in the bath, and I feel like that was like Lighty doing, maybe like by asking, but who knows, we skipped that whole sequence. And then she just sits there with her, and she's talking to her vaguely, and she's not requiring her to give her ample details or say too much. And I think that was like a really good example as to how you should go about friends who experience this. Like, you shouldn't be there to like question and interrogate them. You should like, ask them questions that make sure that they understand the situation at hand, but like, you shouldn't be there to try to decipher whether their experience was real or not. You should just be there to try and decipher what's best for your friend. And in that moment, Lighty knew that the best thing for my friend is for me to be there for her, not to make any other judgments at this moment. Later on in the film, she makes judgments, right? But that's because it's like, we're so far removed from the situation, X, Y, and Z, right? But in the moment, so good, so good. And then she takes her to the gynecologist, right? Who, like, the gynecologist is like kind of an asshole. He's like an older guy, and he's like an asshole. And it wasn't like the stereotypical one, because a lot of films try to make it like where the gynecologists are like, they're like subconsciously being like wrong in their practice when it comes to male gynecologists and having female patients, or women patients, I should say. But this one kind of just like straightforward is like, that guy's an asshole and like he doesn't care about it, because like, that's probably the experience that I don't know. I don't know the experience that women have with gynecologists. I'll never go to a gynecologist. I mean, maybe if one of my friends asked me to go with them, I will, but I don't know. And I believe that gynecologists act that way. I've only been to like the urologist, like which men go to, once, right? And like that was a man, but he was like really nice. So, but I do believe that there's like a lot of like very, very, very impatient, very inconsiderate, very cold gynecologists out there. And this gynecologist in the film, he wasn't like cold, he was just very like inconsiderate. And then like Lighty handles him. Like Lighty handles him immediately. And like immediately is like, what the fuck? And so I love that about her. Like, I love Lighty. I thought Lighty was great. Lighty and Fran, right? Fran is like Lighty's like girlfriend or partner in the future. I'm like, I don't like Fran. Even though we only got like 10 minutes of Fran, I'm like, I don't really like Fran, but oh well. And then Lighty, I think Lighty is like just great in general. Yeah. Moving on. Gavin. Okay, so let's talk about Gavin, right? Gavin was played by Lucas Hedges. Okay, and I've seen Lucas Hedges in a few things before, right? Throughout my childhood, throughout my like teenage years, and like as an adult, right? But Gavin, who is Lighty's like new neighbor, even though she lives on like a lot of land, like he's like the next house over. But he's like, first we see him at the beginning when we're in like the first chapter, and he comes to knock on the door and make sure that Agnes is okay, to check in on her. And then Lighty clocks is like, hold on, are you messing around with this guy? Like, he's a little too concerned about you. And then Agnes is like, okay, stay out of my business. And he's like, okay, girl, like, I've been gone for a while. I'm not going to interrogate you. Cool. And then throughout the film, we get to see how Lighty and Gavin's relationship has developed. And I also think that this is like, Gavin is an insert for people who are dealing with new romantic partners or romantic interest who have experienced sexual assault, right? And how you should go about that. Because Gavin, even after learning about such event, like he doesn't he doesn't look at her differently in any way. And I feel like it's a lot of the times when you're dealing with somebody sexually and you figure out they have been assaulted before, like you kind of do, you should move a little bit differently, right? They are more sensitive to the events, or maybe they aren't, right? But I think the biggest part about that is just like reading them and understanding them. And I think Gavin does that throughout this whole film very well. I think that my favorite, I have two favorite scenes between Agnes and Gavin. My first one is when Agnes goes to ask for lighter fluid. She goes to Gavin's house to ask for lighter fluid because she wants to burn all the shit that reminds her of like, the assault and all that, right? And then like that's a comedic scene, and then he's like, "Oh my gosh, you like, do you want me to like, come help you?" And she's like, "No." And he's like, "Okay, cool. No, I won't come help you. That's totally fine." And then you have that like flipped later on when like she comes down and she's like, "Gavin, like I want to have sex. Like, can we just like have sex?" And he's like, okay, yeah, like, and he's like, "Oh, can I go get my shoes?" Like I thought Gavin was like perfect tone of romantic interest for Agnes in this film. Also, like, it's unconfirmed if Agnes is like bi. Eva Victor like gives off like bi, but like she gives off like, ooh, like you could be kissing girls, like you could be interested in girls, but like it doesn't really like lean tiptoe into that. And I think like it kind of plays with it a little bit in your face because you kind of wonder like if Lydie and Agnes like have a thing with each other, especially because Lydie's gay because she says like she's gay, and then she has like a girlfriend at the end. But you always wonder up until like the Gavin situation if Agnes is going to end up with Lydie, right, or something like that. But they don't. And then that film where Agnes is like, "Let's go have, can you come have sex with me, Gavin?" Cool. They go have sex. Cool. That's such a pretty little scene. Like I love that. It's so cute. And I think it's like Agnes is getting hers, right? But then there's another scene where they're in the bathtub, and I think the bathtub scene is so nice. I think it's so sweet, and that's what I love about the character of Gavin here. Like he's just really a sweet guy. And not in like a weird way, like, there's a lot of films that like try to make like sweet guys into people like, they usually have something else going on that's like weird, and they try to make them like a sweet guy, so then like you don't think they're being weird, but like they're being weird. But here like Gavin's like a regular guy. He's really just a regular guy, and he's consoling her, and also like he's huge. So when he asked her to get in the tub with her, as a huge guy, I'm 6'4". As a huge guy, I already don't fuck with tubs. Like I do not mess with tubs, but getting in the tub, I would do for somebody that I cared for the way that Gavin cares for Agnes. Like they're really meshing. And then like, oh my gosh, I just remembered like the tub scene. So in the tub scene, like Gavin is getting naked because he's like, "Oh, can I get in the tub with you?" And she's like, "Oh my gosh, like why are you turning away from me when you're taking off your shorts?" Like, oh my gosh, why are guys like that? Why do guys feel so ashamed about themselves like that? And like I think that whole conversation they had was really brilliant. Like I think it's really good because I think those are conversations that you just don't see in film anymore. A lot of conversations, at least in the film that I've seen this year, they just don't like hit on like realism. Like they just aren't real. Like there's so much film that came out this year that I'm just like, we're having conversations that like aren't real. Like they're just conversations that like are technically real. Like, oh yeah, people talk like this. People have conversation like this. This is how if like somebody slapped somebody, they would talk to each other X, Y, and Z, right? Oh, if you kill somebody's mom, like this is how you talk to them. Cool. Like, you understand like it's realistic, but it's not real combos. And I feel like this conversation dealt with real conversation. Ugh, I love this film. Okay, moving on. Okay, the next character we're gonna get into is Pete. Okay, now Pete is only in this film for a good time, not a long time. He's literally in this film for like one scene, and it's like probably like, I think like that scene was probably like 6 minutes, 8 minutes long probably. So Pete is played by John Carroll Lynch, who I thought was really good in this film. I think this chapter really just hit on, I mean, obviously Pete is an insert for whenever you meet like a random stranger on the street, like you don't know what they've gone through, and they could have gone through assault before. And so like, it's just a testament to like how you should go about interacting with people who are obviously in distress. And then also I think like the relationship between Agnes and Pete is really interesting because I don't know if you got this, but at the beginning of the film, Lydie and Agnes are eating sandwiches from Pete's shop, right? So Pete has already like kind of been lingering in the background of the conversation of the film. And like, who knows? Like, I feel like potentially if they're getting sandwiches from that shop, they could have ran into Pete before, but like he's like a random person in the city, right? But here Agnes is like she's like spiraling out after she like had the talk with Natasha, who we'll get to next, about Natasha just like, you know, having a sexual relationship with Preston Decker, a consensual one. But, and then like she's spiraling out because she's like, oh my gosh, her car. And then she like pulls to the side of the road, but she ends up pulling to the parking lot of Pete's sandwich shop. And Pete sees her spiraling out in the parking lot. It's like, hey, like you can't be spiraling out in my parking lot. And then like he realizes like, oh, really? He realizes quick, like, okay, she's in distraught, like, and then we cut to like them being on the sidewalk and he's giving her a sandwich and like they're talking things through. And I think the real message with the Pete insert here is that like, you don't have to pry into the mentality and the experience of somebody who you feel like may have experienced sexual assault before. I think a lot of people feel like they want to know all the details so then they can like understand better, but sometimes you don't need to know all the details. You just need to know that it happened and you need to witness how it affected the person who's in front of you. And then you can go further from there. But you don't even need to pry deep. You don't need to be detailed in your language with them. You can be vague because sometimes vagueness breeds comfortability, and then that comfortability breeds openness, and then that openness breeds honesty, right? And I think that's what that whole conversation between them was about. And I really thought it was like a lovely scene. Next, we're going to move on to Natasha. Okay, so Natasha here is played by Kelly McCormick, right? I thought Kelly McCormick was great here as Natasha. I don't know if Kelly McCormick is neurodivergent in real life, but the character of Natasha is definitely neurodivergent to a certain extent. And kind of the antagonist to Agnes's protagonist here. Natasha is envious of Agnes. She feels like Agnes is like, you know, privileged and gets everything easy and it gets everything handed to her and she doesn't fight or try as hard as she does, right? So that envious scene at the beginning of the film when they're at the dinner table and she's being like very shady towards Agnes, and then throughout the rest of the film where like she's just saying like very shitty things to Agnes, or she's trying to throw Agnes under the bus, or she's trying to like just like stab Agnes she's trying to get that like good stab into Agnes, without ever even actually understanding Agnes, right? And I think that's what the insert of Natasha is. There's people you know in your life who you have presumptions about, and you'll never know what they've actually gone through. And you'll feel bad about them. You'll feel they're a bad person. You'll feel that they're nasty. You'll feel like they don't deserve what you have. You'll feel like you're better than them, you know, for whatever reason, right? And sometimes you might be better than them, but who knows? In your mind. But we always think we're better than other people, right? But you will never know what they've gone through. You'll never know how your actions are so different from their actions and how they got a different outcome than you did. And it's also like Agnes never has to express like her full emotionality to Natasha, because she kind of doesn't want to, because like obviously Natasha doesn't want the best for Agnes, so why would I be open with somebody who doesn't want the best for me? And Agnes doesn't want the best for Agnes. I mean Natasha doesn't want the best for Agnes, but it's just like a character insert to show the viewer how like sometimes you have these preconceptions of people and you never know what they go through. So like you probably won't ever know what they've gone through and you probably will treat them bad, or you'll probably look at them a certain way and you'll never ever feel different about that. And that just wasn't the story, you know? That's not what occurred. And I think Agnes is like taking it with grace, because there's other storytelling that would have Agnes like slap the fuck out of Natasha, right? Or call Natasha like a dumb bitch or something like that. But they didn't do that. She did start hyperventilating and she did walk away when Natasha like kind of threw it in her face that she had like a consensual sexual relationship with Preston Decker. But then I think that scene also made Agnes hyperventilate because she realized that Preston Decker wasn't, this wasn't like a one-time offense. He was very inappropriate with his students. And he wasn't a good person. He didn't deserve the remorse that Agnes had given to him over those past 3 years, right? So I think the character Natasha was very interesting to witness as well. I don't like her. I think Natasha is a nasty person. I think the other classmates of Lydie and Agnes were way better. But I don't think that they deserved like, you know, more spotlight here over Natasha, because like Natasha served a purpose with her relationship to Agnes. Next on the list, let's go to Attorney Wilson. Oh my gosh, yeah. So Attorney Wilson, Attorney Winston, is the attorney in the court scene when Agnes gets pulled to jury duty, right? And this is a very quick scene. I believe this is like the third chapter we see. It's like the third or fourth chapter we see. I think it's the chapter with like the chapter about the questions, maybe, I think. Not the good sandwich, but I think it's about the questions. But played by Hedine Park. I've seen Hedine Park in a few other things, but miscellaneous things here and there. But I think she was great here. Like, I think she was great here, and it's a quick scene. It's like a scene that's like literally like 4 or 5 minutes long, and we're in the courtroom. And I think this scene is just to show how, like, even when you're in a professional space, you're gonna interact with people who have dealt with sexual assault, and you won't fully get an understanding of like what they actually experience. You'll know it's bad, but you'll never come into contact with them, right? And I think your purpose is like, even when you come across people who have experienced sexual assault, I think the purpose of the film, is that even when you've come across people who have experienced sexual assault, even if you don't care for them, they are somebody who is just another body in your day, right? You still don't have to be nasty. You can be courteous, because Attorney Winston was courteous here. I think her at first asking for clarification in front of all those people was obviously like, But then they did excuse her. So it's just also like, it was an I see you moment. I feel like that was like an I see you. I see you, but go about your day. Like, you're still a regular person. You're not special, and not in a bad way, but it's just like, you're not like in obscurity. Like, it's understandable. So I thought that was a great character insert as well. I think it also like kind of hit on like how like sexual assault survivors like have to interact with the like criminal justice system. It requires them to like pry out their misfortune, but we can move on. The next character we can talk about is Preston Decker. Now, Preston Decker, played by Louis Cancelme. Cancel Me. Okay, that's funny because like, Cancel Me, like, Preston Decker should be canceled. I think it kind of like lingers on like, will he be canceled or will he not in the film? He isn't canceled in the film, which I think is an interesting choice as well. Because like, Agnes gets relief. She gets relief from the harm and the violence that was done against her by Preston Decker, but it's not due to him being locked up behind bars. It's not due to her having to go through like a whole court case or having to be ridiculed while she's trying to get her justice. She gets it from herself, and I think that was very powerful. But also, Louis Cancelme, he's here. I don't want to say he's like great, because it's just like it was an okay performance, but like I think like he portrayed how cunning assaulters are, how a cunning people like these are in real life, how you don't want to believe that they're a certain way, because he seems like a cool guy, he seems like a cool professor, he's a cool like middle-aged professor. He's rhetorical, he's sarcastic, he's quippy with his students, but then like you kind of feel like in the first chapter, in the beginning of the second chapter, you kind of were like, oh, maybe this is a consensual thing, and they play with it too. Lydie and Agnes talk about that. They're like, oh, would you have sex with him? Would you? And I think that's the story also playing with like, even if you pre-thought that you would be attracted to somebody to have sex with them, it doesn't mean that it's just when you get to that point, it's going to be how you wanted it to be, because it wasn't even consensual. That's not how she wanted it to be. They should have never met at his house. That was completely unprofessional. There was a lot of unprofessional things about the way he interacted with her. But yeah, I think that the story uses Preston Decker in a very, very, very important way. And I don't really want to get too deep into that, because like, I feel like as somebody who isn't in that position of a character like Agnes, I don't really want to overstep in what I say. But yeah. And then you have like a few other characters. We can get to like the miscellaneous characters of the film, right? Like, we can get to like the dad and the son at the lake. Oh my gosh, the dad and the son at the lake. I thought that scene was funny. I'm a proponent of divorce. So like, I feel like if you don't want to be with nobody, don't be with them. So the little boy just being like, yeah, my dad's like divorced. Like, that's why we're here together. And then like Lydie being like, that's totally fine. That's totally fine. Because it is fine. Like, people don't always stay together, and like, children should know that, right? Then you have like the student in Agnes's class, like the dude bro who's like the student, like he says something that's very funny. I thought he was funny. The gyno doctor, we already spoke about the gyno doctor and him. Oh, we have the cat. I'm not a cat person, but the cat was cute. Also, the cat bringing the dead mouse in. No. Never, never. That's why I won't have a pet. I will not have a pet, at least not until I have children, because no, there won't be any bringing in dead animals. There won't be any pooping on my carpet or in my bed, anything like that. But I do get the purpose of the cat. I do get the purpose of the cat in the film. And then you have like Fran, you have Devin, you have Logan, all great. Everybody's great. I think everybody in this film did great. And I guess like my overall feelings of the film, you know, I think like the messaging of the film is that you're just not here to understand situations like this at all times. You don't have to understand it. You just have to be there for the people who you care about or interacting with, who are victims of said situation, you know? And I don't even know if victims is the right term to use, but survivors of it. And I thought that was great. I mean, overall, I would give this film 5 out of 5. Like, I would give this film 5 out of 5 stars. I would give this film 10 out of 10 stars. If anybody was to give this film a 4 out of 5 stars, I'd be like, okay, I can understand that. But if you're giving this film anything below an 8 out of 10, a 4 out of 5, you're kind of, you know, odd. But who knows? You know, I would defend this film for a while. I think it was one of the best films experiences I had this year. It might be the best film I see this year. But, you know, there's a lot more film coming out this year. And we're going to get into it. And, you know, it's my first film review video, so I feel good about it. I am excited to see what comes of Eva Victor. I think that Eva Victor is onto something great. That's your first film, and it's great. I'm ready for the second film. I'm here for anything Eva Victor wants to put out. I will be seated. Yeah, so yeah, like I said, just a really good film. We're gonna do more film reviews. I'm gonna get better at this. You know, this is the first video. And so I think like we're definitely going to get into a lot of the bigger films from this year. But I'm definitely gonna do the recap video. I think I'm gonna do kind of like some genre videos and some trope videos, but you'll be able to see that when they come out. Okay, that's it. I hope y'all have a great day. See you in the next one. Bye.